Hi, I'm Dave Roberts and this is Angling Escapades. Hello and welcome to Angling Escapades, and today we are in Hereford Town Centre. We've got the cathedral just up there, we've got the Victoria Bridge there, quite a famous swim here, the end of the tennis court section. And what I've come to do today really is just to fish. We have had the last couple of months virtually, certainly since the sort of mid-October, we've just had high rivers. Every match we've fished, you know, every competition we've run, it's been touch and go whether the levels would be whether we've been able to fish. We've had to cancel at least one match, and every match we've fished, the river has been about 5 or 6 feet above summer level and more in some cases. And as a result, a lot of the fishing we've been doing has been a lot of pole work, a lot of heavy floats, flat float fishing, really anchoring baits down, and there's just been no running line fishing, no, you know, sort of stick floats, wagglers. It just hasn't been on the table, and that's what I love doing. And it just feels like it's been a sort of a long a few weeks. So the river now has dropped down to a level that's float fishable, and I thought I'd just come and have a go and just try and run some floats through and see if I can get some bites. Now with this swim, I have to say it was I nearly didn't come on this swim. When I saw it this morning, I thought it would be lower than it is, and I thought it wouldn't be quite as pacey. But I thought, you know what, that's what I'm here for. If I hook something here, no matter what size, it's going to give me plenty of grief. So I've got some tackle set up, you know, to sort of handle that. But literally all I'm going to do, because I know the bottom here, I know where I'm fishing. Gravel bottom here, it's not terribly deep, so I know I can get a trail of bait going and hopefully get the fish to come onto my trail of bait. When it goes colder into the winter, you know, or lower, the fish tend to, there's a gully on the far bank here, and the fish tend to hang around in there, and you have to fish further over. And actually, when the river's low, I'd be sat out there on a platform. But on this height, hopefully the fish should be prepared to come closer and come to my trail of bait. So that's the plan really. Is I've just set up 2 float rods, and all I'm going to feed is maggots. I just had bait left over. This time of year, obviously we're using plenty of bait on the river, but maggots I can keep for over a month, just by sort of keeping them in the fridge, keeping them fresh, giving them a clean every now and again, keeping plenty of maize meal on them. You know, and these maggots now, some of these will be 3 weeks old, some of them are last week's, and I just keep sort of recycling the bait, keep it nice, and I'll use that for the next match or for the next session. And as it is, I haven't got a match this weekend, so I thought, you know what, I've got about 6 pints of bait, so I'm going to come and use it up, just have a day's fishing and try and do a video for you guys that hopefully shows a bit of action and the rods bending, which I'm sure they will in this flow. I say it's a little bit big, but you know, it's the sort of fishing I love doing, so we're going to give it a go. So bait is just maggots. Now I could have brought some hemp. If I'd have been a bit more organised, I'd have probably had some hemp with me, and that would have just put something I could have put in, just to ensure that something hits the bottom and maybe create an area if there was more, so if there's a chance of barbel or some roach or that sort of thing, something that would hold the fish there. But the reality is, if I can keep a trail of bait going, and that's what I hope to sort of show today, is that if we can just keep a trail of bait going, a column of bait, we'll keep those fish in our zone and be able to keep fish coming, hopefully. So as I say, I could have bought some hemp, I could have put ground bait in, but I've just gone with maggots. I'm just going to keep a trail of bait, keep firing bait out with a catapult on a line, hopefully keep those fish coming. So equipment, now this is traditionally, you know, on a lower water, this is a waggler peg, and in winter we tend to fish different types of wagglers. A big waggler for dragging line along the bottom, trying to slow it down, and maybe a lighter waggler for fishing through your bait. The reality is, in this flow, I'm not going to slow anything up with a waggler. So all I've done is I've set up I've got, let me get it out of the weeds. I've set up today this is a 3-swan truncheon waggler. So this is a DH angling pattern. Pattern I love using. Truncheon for obvious reasons, the shape of it. And what these do, these are sort of like on the sort of speci-wag style of things. They've got a thick top on them, so that will take plenty of, it'll take the current, it'll take a little bit of line dragging along the bottom, but it'll sort of go through the swim quite steady and it won't sort of just drag under. 3-swan, is reasonable weight. I've just got that shotted, with the bulk around the float there. And then what I've got coming down then is I've got a series of number 8 shots coming down. I've got about 10 number 8 shots, all sort of shirt button style a little bit, and then sort of spacing out towards the hook. Now the reason I like to have, I've got plenty of shots on there. I can do plenty with those number 8s. The reason I use number 8s is I can put them together, I can put them in 2s together, or even 3s. I can change it accordingly. But in flow like this, you're going to be doing a lot of mending of line. You're going to sort of be trying to mend the line to keep your float straight, keep your line straight to your float. And when you're doing that, when you mend the line, obviously the float goes under and it moves, and that sort of transfers down through the rig. So from the float it goes down. Now if I just have 1 or 2 shots, that then becomes, when that float moves, the float moves, the shots then follow it, and it becomes quite a jerky sort of a process, where actually when you have these string of shots, and it's the same with stick floats, when you have these sort of nice sort of string of floats, it almost cushions that. So when you mend the line and the float moves, it'll just cushion into that a little bit, and it stops your hook bait from wafting around in a very unnatural way. So that's why I like to have a series of shots. And like I say, this rig today is not about slowing the rig down. It's not about dragging lots of line on the bottom. It is purely about getting my hook bait down in amongst my loose feed. Ultimately, like I said earlier, trails of bait, and I want my hook bait to be traveling through that trail of bait. So that float, it's big enough to withstand the constant mending. It's not going to pull off line too much. If you had a light float, then when you mend the line, pull off line too, it would move too far, whereas with that float I can sort of mend the line and it won't move too far off course. So that's the the reason for that size float. But ultimately it's just about getting the rest of it's just about getting my hook bait down into my feed. I think the fish we catch today will be up off the bottom, intercepting those maggots as they're coming towards them. They'll be up and intercepting them. So I think most of what we catch today will be off bottom, if not near bottom. So that's going to be my main rig. And I've set that up. I've got an 018.18 main line, and I've got a 0.13 hook length and a size 13 B711 hook on there. To be honest, the way the flow is, I've got bushes below me here where the fish can sort of kite into, and if they give me any hassle, I'll have no hesitation in going direct straight through, 018 straight through, so I can really sort of bully the fish and get them in. So we'll see how that pans out. I've got to hook something first. Now on the other rod, what I've set up is I've actually set up a stick float. Now, as opposed to setting up another big waggler, I thought this would give me a slightly different presentation. This is actually a lignum stick float. Okay. Now what that means is it's not actually lignum. They don't use lignum anymore, but it's a heavy wood in the base of the stick float. It's a dome top pattern, but it's a heavy wood. And the reason I've chosen that over my normal sort of, I like alloy stems usually, but the reason I've chosen that is because I'm going to be casting this a bit further. I'm going to be casting it about a third out, and those heavy lignum sticks and the shape of them, they cast better, so that will cast to where I want it to go. But again, the shot in is sort of like a tapered string of shots, all in the bottom half. Again, loads of number 8s, just all dotted down, and then slowly getting further apart as you get towards the hook, and then the last shot is probably 14 inches from the hook. Okay, now what that will do is that will cast nice and neat, but it'll get my bait right down straight away. So again, I'm not going to be able to slow it up too much with that, but this rig, you can, if I do hold it back, then your hook bait will be travelling in front of the float, and it might just give that little bit of a flutter to it that'll maybe grab a bite or two. Just a different presentation. Same again, I've gone with the 0.18 main line, 0.13 hook length, size 13 hook, and we'll see how we get on with that. But that just gives me another presentation, in a swim where I feel like our bait's not going to be hitting the bottom really. So, but that will get our bait right down. And just like I say, sometimes there doesn't even need to be a specific reason for it. It's just a different presentation. So that's our setup. 2 rods, nothing, nothing too complicated. And like I say, with regards to feeding, today it's just all about maggots. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off just going to fire maggots in, and this is the key here really, is the continuity of the flow of bait going in. So I'm going to be casting, I'm going to be feeding every cast. I don't want to break in that sort of chain, if you like. So I'm feeding slightly above myself. You've got to be careful in these scenarios. You don't want to feed too far up in case the fish come and sit right underneath your bait. But the reality is, with the amount of flow that's on here today, that bait's never going to be hitting the bottom, and it's going to be taking quite a while to sink down. So you just need to borrow a little bit upstream to get it going. And I say with this, today, with the amount of flow on, I wouldn't think it would take a long time for the fish to find it, but it might take a while for multiple fish to find that trail of bait. And like I say, so a lot of your work, you might spend an hour feeding before you get any response, but it's all about keeping it going in, keeping that trail of bait, trying to create a zone where they come into and we can fish. So we'll start fishing, and we'll just build our way into it and see how long it takes to get a bite, if we get a bite, which I'm sure we will. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 maggots on this hook to start with. I've got a mixture. I've got bronze maggots with reds in. I don't think it matters really. You could probably use white. I don't think it would make a lot of difference. I'm just going to put 2 reds and a bronze on there. A bit of a mixture. And like I say, the main thing about all this is rhythm. You're getting into a nice rhythm with things. So now what I do is I cast. So I'll cast out pretty much in front of me, a little bit further than I need to go, and then get my catapult, feed, mend the line, and when you mend that line, you pull it onto line. So that's why casting that little bit further is important, because you don't pull your float too close in. And that's going through there okay. So I'm just going to mend again there, and that's what this is going to be about today. Is lots of mends, just keeping. It's all about line control, just keeping everything in check, so you're presenting your bait. So I don't know how long that's taken, but that's probably as far as I want to be going there. That's taken maybe 30 seconds to go through the swim. So it's going to be one of those days. It's going to be lots of casts, lots of feeding, but ultimately trying to build up some momentum. Hello. Same again. Cast, feed, mend a line, and you're fishing. So you can be quite, it's about being economical with your movements, making sure you've got everything around you. If you're, if you're someone who likes to sit in a chair to fish, sort of relaxing, then this becomes hard work doing this, because you're not upright. You need to be upright. So you've got choices really. You either sit on a seat box like this, or you stand up with maybe a bait apron or whatever, but you've got to be organised. You've got to have everything around you. That's not going through there too fast. I'm quite happy with that. I feel like if there's fish come onto our feet, onto our trail of bait, that we will have a chance of a bite. It's not going through too fast. When we do hook one, it could be fun. So I choose to feed after I've cast, but you could do it the other way around. You could cast first, and then feed. You could feed first, and then cast. And it really doesn't matter, because I say it's all about that column of bait. The key is doing it in the same pattern every cast, so you're building up that continuity. So if you're someone who likes to feed first and then cast out, that's fine, but just make sure you've got a little rhythm going where you do it the same every time. Now I feel already that the float I've got on there is perfect. I can mend the line, I feel the weight of the float, but the float is not moving more than a foot off line if I have to do a big mend even. So, and at the moment the wind's quite kind for us. So at the moment everything feels like we're going to get some bites, but obviously the first bite is the key one. And as yet the float hasn't dragged under, so we're not touching bottom yet. So my next move will be maybe to add a bit more depth on, just so I'm tripping bottom, and then see where we're up to. But all the time, you know, we've been spending 5 minutes feeding already now, and we're just building that trail. I'm sure those fish will find that trail. A little bit of downstream wind now, so that just makes it a little bit tricky. So you just need to give it that little bit of mend there. It's going to be a real busy day's fishing because you're constantly mending, constantly casting, constantly feeding. Hopefully, constantly playing fish. Okay, so I've had about 12 runs through there now. The float hasn't dragged under, so I've had no bites. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add about a foot of line on, just onto the depth, until I either, you know, see if it either brings a bite or until I start dragging bottom. And then I know I'm definitely dragging my last shot along the bottom. Basically just keep tinkering until we get bites. You just keep adding a little bit of depth, or taking a little bit off, or moving a few shots around. There's lots of little things to try, but ultimately you just want to get to start with, you just want to get to the point where your hook bait is tripping the bottom, and it might just drag under occasionally, or you might get a bite. But I'm happy with how it's fishing. It feels nice. I can't wait to hook a fish, because I feel like it's going to be proper hold on stuff. The mending is easy. It's because I've not got a terrible dang. The wind, if anything, is slightly off my back, so literally the slightest little, just a lift like that with the rod, and it mends the line. And I think that's just starting to drag bottom. I think it just dipped a little bit there. There's a bite. Bring that back. I don't want to be bringing fish from all the way down there, because we could end up in trouble. I meant to point out as well earlier that I'm using 14-foot rods. You know, with Waggler you could perhaps get away with a 13-foot, but then if these fish want to go for this inside cover, then I could be in trouble. So I think 14's a good happy balance today. And on the stick I could use a longer rod again, but I like these 14-foot rods. I feel like they're quick action. You know, you can strike fast, you can fish fast. Doesn't feel heavy in your hand. I think they're just a perfect length for this sort of fishing on this sort of swim. So again, the mend is just a little lift like that. I have treated my line with a line floatant spray, so I know it's floating. I mean, these floating lines, these modern lines now, they float anyway. You know, unless they're obviously a sinking line, but they do. They play very well. But always just give them a little spray, and I've got some muslin grease as well, just to do a couple of yards above the float. If I feel like I'm just not quite, you know, I do find as a session progresses, sometimes lines do sort of maybe take on a bit of water or get heavy. I don't quite know what the science is behind it, but sometimes you just need to find, you know, just put a little bit of grease just helps keep it on top of the water. All the time, just building up that trailer base. I'm sure there'll be some fish will find it. Even if I fish, you know, fed for an hour, I still wouldn't be too perturbed, because I feel like when they do find it, they'll come strong. Noticed a couple of times the float's just wobbled a little bit in old place. I think now we've just got down now where our hook bait is definitely tripping the bottom. I'll probably have another sort of 3 or 4 runs through, and if nothing else, I'll just put a little bit more on and see if it starts dragging under. There's no need to plumb up with waggler fishing on this sort of river. You don't get a real true accurate reading by throwing a plummet on. It's all a bit messy, so you're better off just fishing and working your way into it. Such a nice rhythm to get into though, just feeding, fishing, and you know, even when you start catching fish, it's you're still in that rhythm, and it's the absolute best way to get swims like this going. It's just being very methodical. There's a little dip there. I don't know if it was a bite or not, but that definitely dipped under then. It was back up. By the time I struck, it was back up, but it just dipped a little bit there. What you've got to imagine as well is in this speed of current, those fish, you know, they've got a split second to grab that bait. It's not like they're getting to look at it long. So, you know, with this sort of fishing, you will get missed bites and you will pull out a fish, because you're just never going to get the perfect. They're not going to have lots of time to get at it, really. Maggots look okay. Let's try that again. Probably feeding about 30 maggots each cast. Which, you know, that might be a lot on some fish, but when you know none of your bait is hitting the bottom, you know you're not damaging the swim by feeding heavy. And I just think it's like a process you go through, and just, you know, you put a good amount in and then you really create that column. I can always cut it back if I need to, or even have to put more in, but for now that seems like the right amount. That was a bite. Maybe my first bite. Float went under. It's not gone under there before, so. Maggots. I don't think you wouldn't see a, you know, in this current you wouldn't get sucked maggots. Just put another couple on there because they were a bit stretched. I think that was a bite. I think that might have been our first bite then, so positive signs. Feel a big fish. Ah, it came off. That's disappointing. It wasn't a big fish, but say it happens when it's like this. You know, the fish aren't getting any time to really watch the bait and grab it. So it's, you know, getting a perfect hook hold is not always easy. But anyway, listen, it's a bite. big fish. Chub, I reckon. There we go. It's a start, isn't it? Perfect chub of a bait. That's a pound. 12 ounces to a pound. I imagine there'll be plenty of those out there. So there you go. Those couple of little, getting it just a bit further, just so it's just touching bottom a bit more, or scraping bottom, and that's resulted in bites and a fish. So now we can really, you know, I feel like those fish don't swim around on their own, so there should be plenty of those sort of size fish there. And now we can really hopefully build up momentum, keep that bait trail going in. Don't have to think about anything else other than just keeping that rhythm of feed, cast, feed, mend, set it up, and be ready to strike. Time. Other fish, similar size. Smaller, that one. You can see how quickly it can turn. You know, now I feel like I'm going to get a bite every cast now. It doesn't take those fish long to find that trail of bait. Now, one thing you will notice is how hard, how fast I strike, and that's essential with this long range, or you know, fast flowing waggler fishing. You know, there's so much that fish is grabbing that bait very quickly, and there's so much sort of line between you and the fish that you've really got to set the hook. So it requires a real fast, hard strike. Like that. So you see where my rod's ended up there? It's right behind me there because there's so much line to pick up. So it's got to be hard and fast. Because all that will happen if you don't strike hard enough, you might hook the fish, but then halfway in it will come off because it just didn't get a good enough hook hold. It's something you need to learn, you know, when you do this sort of thing, you need to learn the capabilities of your equipment. One of the biggest thing I get with guests when they come to me is you know, when they're fishing, they don't strike hard enough, or hard, you know, and it's because they're bigger, this one. You know, they feel like they're going to do some damage if they strike too hard, but actually, you've got to know the capabilities of your equipment. Yeah, that's a bit bigger. £2 fish, that one. Looked lovely, just right in the top lip, that one. Say it's all about that real positive fishing. Strike hard, strike fast. But now we're just in a real nice rhythm now. It's, you know, this is turning on exactly how I hoped it would. You know, we fed for 20 minutes, fished for 20 minutes, adjusted the depth a little bit here and there, and whether it was anything to do with that or whether the fish have just found the trail of bait, but I imagine it's a combination of the two. And now what will be interesting is those bites are coming probably 3/4 of the way down the swim. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get them a bit higher up the swim and, you know, maybe fish off the bottom a bit more. So we're not having to pull them from as far or strike as far away. But yeah, so it's about knowing you know, what you can, how hard you can strike, and that you're not going to break these rods, especially fishing at this distance. But it's, you know, they're designed for a fast strike. The actions of these rods, they're what would be described as a fast action rod. So when you strike like that, you set the hook. And I'm, you know, I'm a million miles away from the point where I'd be putting my hook length in danger by striking that hard. You know, I'm literally striking that hard, and I'm connected when I can feel the fish when the rod gets to there. So you can see. Don't get me wrong. If it was clear, if I was getting bites right in front of me, then yes, then you wouldn't strike. You wouldn't follow through with the strike quite so much. A little bit that fun. There's obviously a lot of these sort of fish there, though. Which, you know, in this flow with this sort of setup, you know, they're great fun. They are. Yes, we'd like to see some bigger ones, but ultimately, if you're getting bites off a little chub like that every cast, it ain't a bad day's fishing. Of course, the other key to that strike is getting that strike in is having your rod downstream. So you get a full arc of a strike. So I'm just going to mend there, and once I've done that mend, I'm going to follow the rod downstream, so that when that float goes under, my rod's downstream and I'm striking to there. Missed that one. Yeah, if you've got your rod in this position here and you strike from there, well, you've only got half a strike. It's sometimes harder if you've got a downstream wind. It's harder to, you know, you're trying to keep your rod upstream of the float and what have you. But if you follow it, so if your starting position for the strike is downstream, you get a full arc of a strike, enabling you to set the hook properly. You can do if you strike like that and it's still on line because you've meant your line properly all the way down, you can feed again and just check, and then you've got a second bite of the cherry, really. There you go. Feels like a bigger one as well. So again, it's about being economical with your movements. You know, we struck, and because I've got good line control, I didn't have to wind in. I could just let it run again. You know, it wasn't running down the same line, but it was a similar line. Now it's going to go for those bushes on the inside. This is where it gets messy. Come on, you. This is why you've got to have the gear on, because it could easily make a fool of you. But yeah, just by being organised, I was able to just let that run and have another run in it, and feed in between as well. so far. There you go. Look. There you go, our biggest fish so far, and that's just come from being organised and proactive. You know, after striking, knowing I've got time to feed again. And it's resulted in the biggest fish of the day so far. I wouldn't mind catching those every cast. 3 pounds, I bet. So as much as there's lots going on here, lots of moving parts in this whole process, and you know, if you don't do this sort of thing, it might look a bit daunting, but the reality is it's very simple. Cast, feed, mend the line, everything's comfortable, everything's around me. Let it run on its way, and then just, I don't know, once everything's settled, just give it another little mend just so I know my line's straight, hardly moving that float off line. Follow the rod tip downstream, and then wait for your bite. No bite that time. So there we go, so I've missed a bite, so I'll just pick up the catapult quickly, feed, quick mend, let the float run. Not that time, but I got a second bite at the cherry. Well, this is just turning into just a brilliant session. It's exactly what I'd hoped for, and you know, I'm getting a bite virtually every cast at the moment from chub of all sizes. The biggest I've had so far is about £3, and I'd like to think there were some bigger ones there. But I'm interested at the moment. What's happened now is I've definitely got, there's an area of the swim where the fish are, you know, the float's going under every time, if you like. So I've got that sort of, that hot spot, killing zone as I like to call it, although apparently that's not politically correct anymore. But there's definitely an area now where I feel, you know, where the fish are intercepting the bait. I feel that's where the float's going to go, and up there. Oh, missed that one. But I do feel like I want to, you know, I feel like these fish now, so there's plenty of fish there. They've found my bait. I'm getting bites, but I do wonder if maybe some of the bigger ones might be sat slightly off bottom, you know, might be coming shallower now, because obviously I've got that trail of bait going, and there's no shortage of fish and no shortage of bites, so there should be some. Obviously, you know, I've had them to £3, but there should be some bigger ones, more bigger ones there, I think. So we've been fishing about an hour and a half, so by now, if the bigger ones were going to move in, I'd have expected to see. And so I'm going to start playing around a little bit. I mean, listen, if I carry on catching like this for the rest of the day, I'm going to have an absolutely amazing day. But I do like to tinker, and I do just wonder, these fish must be, you know, I'm tripping bottom with my rig, but I do think the fish must be coming up and intercepting the bait now. I mean, that's a fish of probably £1.5, maybe £2. So I will just have a go at shallowing up a little bit and just trying a few different things. But ultimately, if I just keep catching like this, I am going to have a lovely net of fish by the end of the day. quite aggressive. I'm going to come 2 foot off what I've already got on there. Let's see what effect that has. Interestingly, the float sort of went under in the same place it's been going under, but there's obviously just, I've got that little hot spot there. So I've just come two foot off bottom, or 2 foot off what I was fishing, and had a bite straight away. So a little spell at fishing at that depth and see if we can see if it changes anything. Slightly bigger. And that's what a lot of this is about judging where you're, how those fish are reacting to your loose feed, whereabouts in the swim they are. And that went under before the hot spot that I've been catching it, so yeah, definitely I'd say a fish up off the bottom there. Smaller that one. Still a nice stamp. Well, this is just phenomenal fishing. I've got to a stage now where I've just found the depth where they're at, the right depth to be running. I'm just running it through every time, getting a bite virtually every cast. I had that little play around when I tried coming shallow, and yes, I could get bites doing different things, but it's clear that there was nothing I could do that was going to sort of get any of the bigger fish. The bigger fish just obviously aren't there, or they're not, they're sitting back or whatever. So we're just catching what's there really, and it's just beautiful fishing. Like I say, I've just reached that point where I know exactly what's going to happen every cast. It's a bite every cast. It's perfect. But the wind has dropped a little bit now, so I am going to try the stick float just because I want to see. I don't think it's going to make a massive difference to anything. I think we'll catch on it. I don't think it'll be any better than the Waggler, but we set it up, so we might as well have a go on it. Now the wind's dropped a bit. See how this goes through. See if it makes any difference. On that one through. There we go. So as soon as that wind gets up, it's not nice. It's not as easy to fish as a waggler. And I don't feel like I'm going to gain any. If it was not quite as hard flowing or the downstream wind wasn't enough, you know, I might be able to slow the bait up a little bit, but I don't feel like I'm gaining that with this. But to show that the fish are willing to take it. I have started dropping a little bit of bait short as well, so I will just have a go in a minute, just running it, you know, on the inside, just to see if these fish are willing to come close. I do like fishing a big stick float, but on certain days it can be a brilliant way, a better way to catch. With this downstream wind and faster flow, I'm not so sure it's right. That's not going to be very nice now. Can't see it so well either. Proper autumn colours on, everything's orange, and it's fair to say the float's blending in with everything. There's a fish. You can still catch fish, you know, you can still catch on this, but it's just not as nice. You can't see the float so well. You can't control, you know, the lines. Obviously your line's on top of the water and the wind's just blowing it off course all the time. So I don't think this is the method today, but it was worth setting up, because I say on another day, and if it was a bit calmer and flatter, I'm sure it would work well and give you a chance of slowing up the bait. But it's four casts, 2 fish, whereas before it was, you know, every cast was a fish. So I'll have one more cast on the stick float, and then we'll pick the waggler up again. there you go folks, I think that's me just about done. The light's starting to fade a bit now, so I've had an epic day. I have no idea what I've got in that net, but I would say it's you know, a big weight of fish. A brilliant day's fishing really, and not easy in the sense that the wind got up and it was downstream, and you know, it's still very big for fishing a waggler, but shows we kept that trail of bait going and we've managed to keep fish coming all day, and just what the doctor ordered really after months of high water. So I've really enjoyed it. Hope you've picked up some hints, and we'll see you on the next one.